Can you remember back to the first moment that opened your heart to a spiritual quest? When my friend Pamela and I were 5 years old, she came to me in an inner experience. She came to say goodbye as she was transitioning from this world into the world of light. She arrived with an angel that I couldn't see clearly, but I could feel. The angels and Jesus, she promised me, would take care of her in heaven. Pamela appeared to me just as I had last seen her, healthy and quite happy. I had only recently moved to Puerto Rico when this event occurred, and she was living with her family in California. So you can imagine the stir that it caused. As I got up the next morning to announce the great news to my mother that Pamela was with the angels in heaven. In those days, long-distance calls were only used in the most dire of emergencies. So it would be several days before my mother got the call that indeed 5-year-old Pamela was in heaven, and that it wasn't just her youngster's wild imagination. Her mysterious visit changed the way I would view life, and it was the beginning of the crack in my armor, the good kind of a crack, the kind of crack where light gets in. 13 years later, I would have the privilege to come to Questhaven to hear Flower A. Newhouse speak. I was overwhelmed by this lifeline to my chaotic spirit. Never before had I heard anyone's words who were so cohesive with my heart and mind and my feeling for the Christ. I was certain that this great teacher truly knew our Lord, Emmanuel, God with us. Flower's subjects were so vast and varied, I hardly knew where to begin. But I did know I wanted to begin. My conscious mind was lit up with a deeper yearning for God. As Flower revealed a depth of understanding regarding angels and nature beings and the reality of who this great Christ is. All this in a beautiful world of light where God and science not only coexist, but they commingle. Flower's teachings brought me back to church and introduced me to the ceilingless world of God's great creation. She expressed new spiritual concepts with impeccable warmth, intelligence, wisdom, and a love for the Christ so rich and real that I knew I needed to emulate her in some small manner. I was looking for an accessible God, which she delivered, and more. Each of us awakened to something we come in to discover. And for me, it was one of the following things that I heard that hit my heart like thunder. We are to do our own thinking, and that God, or any spiritual path worth following, will bear the deepest scrutiny. What spiritual freedom, what adventure, and how refreshing I knew that this course would be. My personal experiences convey that there are many layers of understanding, and to merely believe and have faith doesn't go quite far enough. While I do have faith, I also know God is bigger than my petty doubts, and the vastness of the kingdom that has been prepared for us is worth the effort to question and to explore and to enter. Well, the way of the mystic is largely a journey for one, deeply personal. Each of us has to find our own way. But we have been uniquely prepared to find that way, and it is said to be within our very DNA, truly in the atoms of our being. You might be a bit like me. We enjoy reading and collecting and listening to other people's wisdom. But we also have to find a way to be still long enough to open to this presence. If we allow it, this time of stillness and silence to connect us, we will be connected to the treasures of our heart. It is not enough to collect knowledge like a squirrel storing up nuts for winter. If one does not assimilate it into their practices, it is like reading books on exercise without actually doing the working out. We can become spiritually congested because this mystical path actually requires action on our part. There is a beneficent current of energy beckoning, wishing to permeate us, to bless and lift, as this process of integration is permitted to move us forward. Ultimately, when the challenging times come, and they will, a spiritual compass is essential. With sincere effort, we may achieve something akin to muscle memory within our spirit, ready to weather the incoming storms. Flower gave us tools and systems to try. She encouraged us to stay creative and connected, that we might find our way more readily up this mountain of God. Through our steadfast earnestness, the benefits would be worth the effort. She gave us key elements that would form a strong foundation. She reminded us that the kingdom of heaven is within. Therefore, it could not be lost. We could seek and merely uncover it. It is carried in the remembrance of our hearts and is accessible through our gratitude for nature, for each other, for beauty, for love of the creatures. This heart of ours balanced with the mind. Daily prayer, creative meditation, study, and perhaps even a nightly assessment of our responses to the day are good mental basics for this growth. One might glean a further insight into Flower's heart for her students as she prepared them for one retreat with this quote: "Beloved pilgrim, with definite intent, we have come to a place where faith and worship are active. In our everyday living, we witness a tendency to become desensitized to higher values and powers. Material duties and pressures exact their toll in weariness and strain. For that reason, we have made a pilgrimage to this mountain to give ourselves time for inner renewal and for stronger alignment with the noble consciousness of spirit. Today, we might substitute church or the academy in place of the mountain for spiritual refreshment and renewal. If we are aspiring mystics, then self-knowledge is no small need in our skill set. Who knew the magnitude of the coming storms that would require such an arsenal? Which of us has not awakened to moments of clarity where we have observed ourselves being ill-behaved or even unconscious? The realizations that come that we've overreacted or we've been thoughtless need not be in vain. Our mistakes are great teachers. The personal mystic adventure might appear to be a solo one. The Christian earthly sojourn tells us to follow our Christ's commandment, to love our neighbor as ourselves. Our wayshower leading us away from the imprisonment of rules that become our God and back to the loftier vibration of self-givingness, of friendship, and of character. He shares that if we are open to living the life and to have that life more abundantly, then actually implementing the tenets that he left us might be a wonderful beginning. I enjoyed a very pragmatic process that Jordan B. Peterson gave. Jordan Peterson is a Canadian psychologist, and he's known to be a bit stern, but very practical, and I found this another approach. So he, in self-reflection, wrote, "What should I write with my newfound pen of light?" And after self-study, he concluded that he would want the following, and I quote, inscribed on his soul. Had he personally contributed to the catastrophe of his life? If so, how had he contributed? How do you build yourself into someone on whom you can rely in the best of times and in the worst, in peace and in war? How do you build for yourself the kind of character that will not ally itself in its suffering and misery with all who dwell in hell? And what shall I do to strengthen my spirit? Do not tell lies or do what you despise. What shall I do to ennoble my body? Use it only in service of my soul. What shall I do with the most difficult of questions? Consider them, the gateway to the path of light. What shall I do with the poor man's plight? Strive through right example to lift his broken heart. What shall I do with when the great crowd beckons? Stand tall and utter my broken truth. And he said, that was that. And then he concludes with a challenge to us. And what shall you write with your pen of light? Our higher nature beckons to us to strive, to be integrous, to go the distance. A concrete spiritual curriculum helps to set the framework for our expanding consciousness and inspires our further contemplation. It keeps us accountable to ourselves. The academy courses have done this for me. But it also brings refreshment to my spirit, and this mystical work calls us, almost through osmosis, to a deeper and deeper understanding of perhaps the authentic self that we long to be. And then in linking to this very nature of our Lord, so vast and strong, we are magnetized to our own true north. We might say with the mystics that we all long for the experience of God as essential and present with and within all of us. And Carolyn Myss says it like this: the great mystics knew that many people are now discovering in their own way, the more the outside world spins out of control, the more your interior world must assume full control. Acquiring material goods will not help you to make sense of the massive changes occurring in this world. Everyone is born with a passion to connect with the sacred. We yearn for that. We have an absolute passion to be brought to our knees before the divine, to witness a miracle, to see the waters part, to see the blind recover their eyesight, to see people healed from incurable diseases. We long to see the presence of God among us in these ways, which is why people also make pilgrimages to sacred spots, why they go out on nature settings, and why they swoon over sunsets. They reach for God and they want to be near God, or as close to the version of God as they will allow themselves to go near. So with this in mind, let us be fearless in our own pursuit to reclaim our birthright, a journey that takes us up the mountain of God together.